Pattern we're going to tie today is called the Royal Wulff, and I was looking through my videos and I was a little bit shocked that I hadn't done this one yet. It's a very classic fly pattern, and it goes way back further than I do. I've got a size 14 dry fly hook in the vise, and I'm attaching 18-aught nano silk in black. Primarily nano silk today, because we're going to be tying a lot of hair on this fly, and I want to be able to crank down pretty tight on it. And nano silk has the strength to allow me to pull down pretty tight. There are other areas we'll have to be a little bit careful. So once I've gone about halfway down the length of the shank of the hook, I'm going to bring my thread back forward about halfway, and I'm going to leave it dangling there. So the first material we're going to turn to is going to be some calf body hair. I've cut myself a nice chunk out. What I like to do when I'm working with this is kind of wiggle my fingers a little bit, let that spread out, and then I'm going to gently just pull on it. And that's just going to help me remove some of the finer fibers, because we want some pretty stiff hairs to make the wings that we're going to be making. Grab our stacker, we're going to stack this. So once I have it stacked, hopefully you can see we've got a uniform line. I want to keep that, so I'm going to go ahead and pinch those fibers. We're going to get a measurement before we tie it down. I'm going to want this hair wing to be about the length of the shank of the hook, so I'm going to take that measurement, which is going to put me right about there. Make sure everything is pinched down and good and tight. I'm going to turn my thread counterclockwise and move that little bunch of hair up here towards the front, where we're going to tie it in. The counterclockwise turning of the thread will just help that thread jump back towards the bend of the hook instead of wanting to jump over the eye of the hook, which is not where we want our thread to be. And being nano silk, I can crank down on this pretty hard, just to make sure we get it nice and solidly in place. We're just going to pull those fibers up at a pretty shallow angle. And then I'm going to sneak my scissors in here, and you'll see by doing this shallow angle here, and I do need to clip off a couple of these, but you end up with it creating the taper that we're looking for. So you can kind of see that taper is kind of already built in. So from here we're just going to work on securing that calf body hair to the shank of our hook here. So I'm just going to wrap back towards the bend. We have a great big drop off there, but we'll work on kind of ameliorating that. Once I've got that down kind of nice and tight, just about like that, making sure I got everything locked in place, then it's time for me to start paying attention to the tail. For the tail, we're going to turn to a moose mane. And you're not going to need a lot of fibers of this. You can see just like 5 or 6 or 7 here is already a lot, and I may remove some of that. I've kind of cleaned it out. We're going to turn to our stacker again and stack this so that we can get those tips aligned. So now that I've got those stacked, I've got those aligned, I'm going to pinch them together so that I can keep that alignment. Similar to the calf hair wing here, I want this to be about the length of the shank of the hook here. So I'm going to take my measure from the bend of the hook here up to the eye, which is going to put me right about there. Then I'm going to move my fingers back to right where the bend of the hook is, and then we'll start to tie this mane in place. I'll take 2 or 3 wraps here. I'm pretty confident that I've got that about as long as I want it. Probably a little too long. That's what you get for being cocky. We'll give that another shot. That's more like it. So now I'm just going to take some wraps backwards towards the bend of the hook, where we're going to start the abdomen on the pattern, making sure that I'm keeping these moose mane fibers that make up my tail on the top of the shank of the hook. Once I've accomplished that, similar to what we did with the calf hair, I'm going to gather up the moose mane fibers. I'm going to try to hold it up on an angle And I want these to end right about where the butts of the calf body ends. And that's just going to help us create that taper and not have to use quite so many thread wraps. So our wing is actually going to be a series of 3 different techniques here. So first we're going to want to stand it up. So I'm going to pull all of those fibers back, and then I'm going to take wraps right against the base of that calf hair, that calf body hair. Not necessarily building up any bulk up going towards the eye of the hook, but by taking what we call these jam wraps right up against that fur, when I let go of it, we'll see it wanting to stand up for us. I'm taking just a wrap right through the middle of that, and then I'm going to take a wrap or 2 behind it, just to get my thread right back onto the shank of my hook here. So hopefully you can see that that's starting to, separate out a little bit. We're going to grab that second bunch here, and we're going to do the same kind of a thing. We're going to do a cross wrap right through the center of it. Then I'm going to take some wraps back on the body. So now we have them nice and separated out. So the final little operation we're going to do here with these is I'm going to post each of these wings up kind of like you would with a parachute. So I'm going to kind of hold that up and in place while I take wraps around the base of that calf fur. And what that's going to do is it's going to provide a very defined white wing on this pattern. I work my way back down towards the bottom on this side. Of course, I'm going to have to do the same thing on the other side here in just a second. Once I get it down towards the bottom, I'm going to take a wrap or 2 over the shank of the hook to make sure that that's in place. So you can see we've kind of posted that side up, take a wrap around it. And we'll just move our way back down to the base again, just like we did on the other side. So try not to let that happen. So there, we've got those wings nice and posted up. We're going to be pulling them back and pushing them forward as we do put more material on it. We've got those 2 wings nice and posted up for us. I'm going to start just working my way back down, back towards the tail here. And on my way down, I'm going to throw in a piece of extra small copper wire against the lens side of the hook. And this is just going to be for durability. That's the only reason I'm tying it on here. It just makes this pattern a little bit more solid and durable. So next we're going to turn to a peacock eye. I've already got a couple of herls collected here. I've clipped the very tip ends of them off because the tip ends tend to be a little bit brittle. We're going to go ahead and tie that in. A few thread wraps kind of moving back towards that moose mane tail. I'll just draw that material back as I'm working my way backwards, and then we won't have to cut it off. Just right back to where we want the abdomen to start, and I don't want to crank down on this nano silk here because it'll cut right through those fibers. That's really not what we're wanting to have happen. I'm going to stand these 2 herls up. I'm going to twist them around a little bit in my fingers. I do that quite a lot when I'm tying with peacock. It just helps keep these fibers from wanting to come apart from one another, because they do love to do that. Once I've got those kind of twisted, we'll make sure we avoid that hook point that's very sharp. We're just going to make a little ball of peacock herl back here at the back end. And it's not going to take that many wraps. In fact, probably more than enough right there. And go ahead, while I have tension on that peacock, I'm going to go ahead and throw my thread over the top of the hook here a couple of times just to make sure I get that locked down in place so it doesn't come unraveled. And from there, I can just come on in with my scissors. We'll cut that balance off. So next we're going to just turn to some red floss. That's going to give us the Royal name. I actually prefer to tie this in, you'll see, kind of backwards with the cut end back here. My thread advanced up to about where I want this kind of band of floss to be. I'm just going to take a few wraps to secure that into place. And it's going to want to wrap around my bobbin, but that's okay. From there, I can just pull on the end. We'll just shorten that down so that we don't end up needing to cut that off. Once I've got that to about there, I'm just going to go ahead and continue tying that down, moving back. And I'll turn my vise from side to side just because I want to have a pretty even band here that I want this floss to travel through and over. And by turning my vise like that, I can kind of get a better perspective of, okay, how am I doing here? Once I've got it to about there, this is where hopefully it makes more sense why I tie it in backwards. We're going to take our floss and we're going to work it back towards that peacock herl, right to the point where it's just, you know, touching it. But with the floss, in order to see it really good, I like to have two coats of it. So I'm going to take one trip to the back, and then we're going to take another trip back up towards those wings there. And that's why I tie it in the way that I do. Now I can just, I've got my two trips in, it's back, and it's back right where I need to tie it off. Go ahead and turn our vise upside down and sneak in with my scissors. And I should have enough to do several more flies. So we've got that in place. So we're going to finish off our abdomen with two more pieces of peacock herl. We're going to tie those in right here where that floss ends. Start tying up a little bit towards the wings there. I'll draw those fibers back as well so I don't have to cut them off. I'll take those herls just like I did the first couple, and I'm going to kind of twist them into a little bit of a rope. And we're going to go ahead just so we have some of that red floss peeking through. And we'll just take a few wraps here, moving back up towards, I guess, the wings that we've got in place there. That we'll go ahead, similar to what we did in the back, we'll secure down those herls with a thread wrap or two. At that point, I'm free to kind of sneak on in here again with my scissors, and we'll cut those off right as close as we can. But you don't want to cut your wing off. That would be a severe bummer for the day. There we go. Well, that was a close one. All right. So from here, I'm going to take this small copper wire, and this again is for durability. This is just going to help secure those peacock herls in a little bit better. I like the extra small because it just doesn't leave nearly as much of a footprint, but it does add that durability to the pattern. You'll see it kind of traveling right through the red floss there. We'll take that right up to behind the wing, and then we'll tie it off. Once I've got that secured in place, we can we'll just helicopter it. It's extra small, so it'll break off really easily. So we're going to round the bend here with some furnace hackle. I'm going to take 2 feathers, appropriately sized, from that hackle. I've got them already prepared. I'm going to kind of get those held as closely together as I possibly can. And we'll go ahead and tie those in right where we want them to begin. I'm going to take one wrap over the top of them. My next wrap is going to go along the other side of them. That's going to help that stand up perpendicular, which is what we're looking for. I want those hackles to be standing up pretty good. Right now I'm just going to get a little bit more length on it. And then we can just finish securing it down. So I'm just wrapping up towards behind the wings there. Then I'm going to go ahead and move to in front of the wings, trying not to capture any of that calf body here. And you'll see that our stems are going to start bending forward, which is exactly what I want them to do. Right on my side of the hook. From there I can come on in with my scissors and we can go ahead and clip off the balance here. So when I'm tying this, some people tie them both, wrap them both together. I don't have enough confidence to do that, so I'm going to do these one at a time. That's how I usually do it. So I've got it attached to my hackle plier. And what I want is each wrap to lay exactly as close as I possibly can in front of the previous wrap. And I'll kind of bob my way around those wings. Try not to trap hackle fibers or any of the calf hair there. I'll go ahead and transition to in front of those wings. Again, I want that in nice and tight. We'll still trap a couple of fibers, but not nearly as many. If you just take your time and you're patient with it like that. I don't know that I was overly patient. I was probably swearing under my breath. You can go ahead and let go on that one. I'm going to just sneak in here and clip that off really nice and close. So now we're going to do the same thing with the second hackle. I'm going to get that in my hackle plier here. Make sure I have enough thread here. I'm going to work on pulling that straight up and do the same thing. This is just going to give us a more robust hackle here. But I'm just taking one wrap right in front of the other. Getting to right behind the wings. We'll bob up and around those wings a little bit so they get surrounded very nicely with the hackle. And we'll take our next wrap. We're going to move in front of the wings. But bobbing it in, trying to keep it nice and close. Go ahead and let's clip that off as close as we can without losing too many fibers. About like that. And I will often just use my half hitch tool here rather than a whip finisher. Just helps keep me from trapping too many of the fibers. So I'm just going to kind of push those fibers back as I put half hitches into place. And that will secure both of those hackles nicely. So with that done, we're just going to grab our thread cutter. I'm going to cut that off nice and close. And with that, we're going to call it good. The Royal Wulff. Like I said, this is a classic pattern. Royal because of the red and green, the red stripe on it. It's got that outstanding calf fur sticking up for nice wings there with a nice furnace red hackle going through it with our moose mane tail. This is a wonderful pattern. It's been around for a long time for a reason. So grab yourself a hook, throw it in your vise, Give this one a shot.